Hi everybody, this is Katie. Welcome to Lesson 2 mini lecture on implementing patch management. So you have in front of you the chapter and you're going to read through this and watch this video, and also I think it'll help to have the notes that I'm looking at or that I've prepared for you as we go through this material. So this chapter is all about Windows Server Update Services, WSUS. And it's a program that's included in Windows servers nowadays that allows administrators to manage the distribution of updates and other patches to the computer in your organization. So when you do your lab for this assignment, you need to have Windows Server Update Services enabled in order to do some of these things. And we'll walk you through that or talk about that in this video today. So you'll read through the chapter. Instead of going through that, you also have, I'm going to go through the lecture notes, it'll be easier, but you also have the PowerPoint that you can go through to read to help you do your quiz and lab assignments. But what we're looking at here is the objective of the exam for the 7411, and we're looking at objective 1.2. That's the topic we're studying in lesson 2. Implement patch management. So it is included, or what is included in this objective is installing and configuring WSUS. So you'll do that in your lab. And then configuring group policies for updates, client-side targeting, configuring WSUS synchronization, configuring groups, and patch management in a mixed environment. So there are about 6 different subtasks under this objective. In these notes, which are also available to download in Blackboard, you have the list of key terms and acronyms. That's very helpful to use when you're studying and also doing Transcender. So to start off, in order to do all of the tasks in Lesson 2, we need a server, which we have already. And then we need a Windows 8 system to demonstrate in configuring WSUS. We're going to do that later. We're not going to do all of the hands-on tasks in this chapter or in this lesson quite yet, because all we have right now is a server. But we'll get to it and add a Windows 8 system later. And then we also have Active Directory that we need enabled in order to do, or have an Active Directory set up in order to do a full demonstration of all the tasks. Using Windows Update is sufficient for updating 1 or 2 computers. So we want to do a mass update of all of these systems at one time. So typically, you're not doing just a small amount. You can go through and do individual updates. You're talking hundreds of computers. Similar to Lesson 1, where you put images on many computers at one time, with this role inside of Windows Server WSUS, it's to do updates to hundreds of computers at one time. So same concept, different thing that we're updating. Here is a list of the configurations that we need, or the required configuration to implement WSUS, and the server requirements. So it tells you in order to have this running on your server, your computer or your server must have at least 10 gigs available, 1.4 gigahertz processor, this much memory, and so on. In our lab assignment, we are only going to go through the installation of WSUS from the Server Manager. Now let me pull the lab assignment up real quick, because I have a note in the assignment itself that I want you to pay attention to. Installing WSUS happens, let's look at the textbook. Right here on page 20, you're going to go through these steps. And this works no problem. We go through, we create, on the C drive, we create an updates folder. That's where we'll put our files. You add roles and features, and if you don't know where to do that inside of the Server Manager, send me or give me a call and I'll help you with that. But there are instructions in the book and in the lab assignment as well. But we're going to add WSUS as a role or feature-based installation. Now, when you get to the second part here on page 21, we'll get to right about step 3 or step 3 or 4 or 5, and you'll see an error message that says you have to have system backup enabled. If you don't, then you need to go back to Manage Roles and Roles and Features and add that as a role or feature. So I have a note. Look at my book real quick. It's really easy to do. You just add it like we added the roles and features for last chapter. And then in the lab assignment itself, I added a note. It says, and even when you read the error message that comes up, it says something like, if server backup roles are not installed, go back to the Add Roles and Features under the Server Manager and install Windows Backup. So in order to configure WSUS, you have to have backup enabled. Now, where it does, we're using a virtual system. So when we try to choose the upstream server, through our virtualization, we're not connected. So you get an HTTP error, and you can get through about step 6 in this particular project. But that's okay for now. When we go on, let me go back to our lecture notes. When we go on to configure it, you'll see how you will be able to walk through these tasks in the chapter that show you how to do things like update files and languages, do automatic approvals, do synchronization schedules, cleanup wizard, email notifications. You can still go through all of the settings for update services without having it fully running. We don't have a Windows 8 system or Windows 10 system configured or connected to our network at this point. But we can see how this is done. Then let's see. So that's under configuring WSUS. You can only do a few of those things. Under approving updates, one advantage of using WSUS is that you control which updates clients receive and when clients receive those updates. So it gives us an opportunity to test the updates and then roll them out into computer groups. So clients will not get any updates until you approve them in the WSUS console. And those tasks in the chapter, it shows you where to do that, how to set up all updates, critical updates, security updates, and WSUS updates. And then you can assign them to groups by approving updates for a group or rejecting or customizing. So again, tasks in the lab and tasks in the chapter will show you how to do that. Another benefit of WSUS is managing patch management in a mixed environment. So there are advantages to having just one OS for the clients and one OS for all servers. Most companies are going to have a mix of operating systems. Even in a small company, you might have one that's updated to Windows 10 and one that might be using Windows 7 still. So that's what we're talking about. You'll have to look at how a single server or a set of servers can service different versions of Windows. And this is talked about at the end of the chapter. So take a look at that when you're reading through your work. 2 business scenarios at the end. We're just hired. We have more than 1,000 client computers in 2 office buildings located at different sites. So we're dealing with a WAN. We've determined that computers that have not been patched in 18 months. So what would we do to implement a solution? We need to update these computers seriously ASAP. So we'll deploy a WSUS server on each site. It'll be 2 of them. We would deploy WSBS by installing it as a server role, which is what you'll do in your homework. And then we'll synchronize updates and create computer groups. After we test each update, to test the update, we're going to create a test group to do that. Then you'll deploy the update to each of the computer groups until they're fully deployed. So scenario 2, we have the following departments. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 departments. How many groups should we create and why? We have 5 main departments, so we're going to create 6 groups. The 6th group is for testing. So we have one group for each of the departments at WSUS, and then we have a test group that enables to test the patches to make sure that there's no problem with deploying the patches and that there are no issues with updates. Always good in any environment, and we're working in Windows environments, to have a test group for everything we do. You'll see, let me pull up lab, homework assignments. In Lab 2 assignment, this is what I was talking about. We have installed WSUS, page 20. You should be able to go through that, no problem. Number 2, when you're configuring WSUS, when you begin the steps, you'll get an error message you may get an error message if you don't have server backup enabled that says server backup roles are not installed. So you go back to manage and add, and then add roles and features. And under the feature page, which is a few pages in, when you click next and next and next, it will say add Windows server backup. So you mark that box, and then you can go back to do your initial configuration of WSUS. We are stalling out on step 9 unless you have a different type of setup with your virtual system. So that's as far as we're able to get for now, and that's okay. Even not enabling the entire WSUS at this point, you're still able to browse through some of the things that you can do. So I want you to pick 2 of the tasks that are in the chapter that have you using WSUS update services and explain what those features do. So, for example, if I'm looking at page 24 and it says to look for this, where any of the tasks that say open the server and go to Windows Server Update, any of those tasks, there's options, there's different configurations. You can go through all of these and understand what each thing is doing and even set them. So when you go to the options pane and you select products and classifications, it explains to you what that does. So I want you to pick 2 tasks from the chapter, go through them, and explain to me what you've learned in that lab assignment. So enjoy the chapter. Email me if you have any questions. Thank you.